Welcome back to the deep dive, where we kind of take, all this interesting stuff and boil it down to the good bits just for you.
Yeah.
So today we are diving into the Haters Handbook by L. Robinson.
Okay.
Have you heard of this one?
I have heard of this book, yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about this whole idea of don't hate the player, hate the game, but specifically kind of within this urban context. So
it's interesting because it really does encourage this shift in thinking.
Right.
Instead of kind of getting stuck in that feeling of why them, not me.
Totally.
It really asks us to step back and analyze, what is the bigger picture?
The systems.
The systems at play.
The rules. And I think that that's something we can all relate to.
Of course.
Like, it's so easy to get caught up in those moments of envy, when your neighbor wins the lottery or when, a friend lands that dream job. And Robinson really uses those, really familiar feelings as a starting point.
Right.
But then he flips the script. He's like, instead of focusing on the other person's win, you should be looking at the game that led to that success. What were the strategies they were using?
Right.
What were the opportunities that they were seizing on?
Yeah, and even what advantages did they have going in?
Totally. It's really about... And that's where the book gets really interesting, because he uses this really compelling story about these two best friends, Beth and Patrice, to illustrate this whole hate the game concept.
Interesting.
And they both live in the same housing projects,
Right.
They're dealing with the same, tough realities.
Sure.
We're talking rundown buildings, the constant threat of violence, limited job opportunities. It kind of paints this pretty stark picture of the environment they're living in.
It's like, they're in this shared environment.
Right.
But they have completely different outlooks on life.
Oh.
So Beth is very driven. She wants a better life for herself and her kids.
Yeah.
And she's willing to work for it. Patrice, on the other hand, is kind of content with the way things are.
Yeah, it almost feels like they're playing two different games.
Interesting.
Even though they're living in the same world,
Right. Yeah.
So Beth gets a job at a real estate company.
Okay.
And she's really working towards this goal of moving out of the projects.
Got it.
And she even asks Patrice to help with childcare.
Oh, okay.
So they're still relying on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because what's really compelling here is that Beth, despite having very little herself, is incredibly generous with Patrice.
Right.
She's always buying her gifts.
Yeah, taking her out. Yeah.
Making sure their friendship is strong.
Yeah, and I think that shows that her ambition isn't about leaving Patrice behind. It's about trying to create a better life for herself while also maintaining those really important connections.
It is, yeah. It's a very nuanced...
Yeah.
Look at how we often perceive success, especially in communities where resources are scarce.
Totally.
There's this assumption that one person's gain has to be another person's loss.
It has to be at the expense of someone else, yeah.
Yeah, but Beth shows that it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then things take a turn.
Okay.
Beth gets this chance to move out of the projects.
Okay.
Because her employer offers her this subsidized rent deal.
Interesting.
It's a huge opportunity for her.
Right.
But it's also where Patrice's reaction really gets to the heart of that hating the player mentality. So there's this initial shock and disbelief from Patrice.
Yeah.
Which quickly turns into resentment and anger.
Okay.
But what's really crucial here is that Beth never actually says anything. Explicitly looking down on Patrice's choices.
Right.
But Patrice feels judged.
Yeah, she feels judged.
She feels like Beth sees her as a do-nothing project hoe.
Wow.
Even though Beth never actually says anything like that.
Right.
It's all about perception.
It is all about perception.
And that perception, that feeling of being judged and left behind, is what fuels Patrice's decision to report Beth for welfare fraud.
Wow.
So instead of looking at the steps Beth took to get to that point, she makes this drastic decision to try and tear her down.
It's really wild. So what's the game?
So what is the game that Beth is playing here?
Yeah, what's she doing?
She's working hard.
Yeah.
She's taking advantage of opportunities, and she's staying connected to her community.
Yeah, she's demonstrating that upward mobility is possible.
Right.
Even within a system that often feels like it's rigged against you.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
She's defying the odds.
Yeah.
But to understand Patrice's reaction, we also have to look at the game she's playing. You know, she's stuck in this cycle of resentment, focusing on what she doesn't have instead of what she could achieve.
It's like she's so focused on hating the player, like being angry at Beth's success, that she's completely missing the point of hating the game. Understanding the system that's keeping her trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So it's heavy stuff, but it's...
Yeah, it is.
It's really interesting to think about.
It really is.
So it really makes you think about how we view success. Like, what does it even mean to make it?
Yeah.
You know, especially in different communities.
Right.
Because Robinson talks about this double standard surrounding success and welfare. You know, it's like, depending on where you are, the same actions can be seen as either inspiring or suspicious.
It's true in some communities.
Yeah.
You know, especially those with more resources and opportunities, entrepreneurship is celebrated. You know, it's seen as the embodiment of the American dream.
Totally.
But in other communities, particularly those struggling with poverty, the same drive and ambition can be met with mistrust.
It's almost like the rules of the game change. Depending on where you're playing it.
It does.
You know? Like in Beth's case, she's hustling. She's working hard to create a better life for herself and her family. But it backfires because of these societal perceptions.
It raises some pretty big questions about how we judge others and how much those judgments are influenced by our own backgrounds and biases.
Like, are we even aware of our own biases?
Exactly.
You know, when we're looking at other people's situations.
Yeah, and it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
You know, Robinson pushes us to think about the systemic factors that contribute to these inequalities.
Oh, really?
You know, it's not just about individual choice. It's about understanding
the context,
the historical and societal forces that create those different playing fields in the first place.
I mean, think about the history of housing projects. Like the lack of investment in certain communities.
Exactly.
The way poverty is often criminalized. All of these factors create a system that makes it incredibly difficult for people to break out of these cycles. So while personal responsibility is important, we also have to acknowledge that the game isn't always fair. You know? There are systemic barriers in place that make it harder for some people to succeed no matter how hard they work.
And that's where the real power of don't hate the player, hate the game comes in.
Okay.
It's not about absolving individuals of responsibility. But it is about recognizing that the system itself needs to be addressed. You know, it's a call to action. To look beyond those individual stories and start examining the underlying causes of these inequalities.
So how do we even begin to do that? Like, how do we move beyond just recognizing these systems and actually start changing the rules of the game?
That's the big question.
What can we do, even in our own lives, to make things more equitable?
Well, the first step is awareness.
Okay.
We have to acknowledge that these systems exist. And that they impact all of us in different ways. Then we can start having those difficult conversations about privilege.
About access.
About access to opportunities. About how our own biases might be shaping our perceptions.
It's about getting uncomfortable.
It is.
It's about challenging those ingrained beliefs and assumptions.
This is assumptions.
That we might have about success and failure.
And then it's about action.
Okay.
You know? It's about supporting policies that create more equitable opportunities. It's about speaking out against injustice. It's about using our own resources and platforms to amplify marginalized voices.
It's about changing the narrative around success.
Moving away from this idea of a zero-sum game.
Where one person's win has to come at someone else's expense.
Exactly. It's about creating a system where everyone has a chance to thrive. Regardless of their background or circumstances.
Robinson really challenges us.
He does.
To think about how we even define success in the first place. Like, is it just about individual achievement? Or is it about something bigger?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. What does a win really look like? Not just for ourselves, but for our communities and society as a whole.
And maybe, just maybe, if we can start to shift our focus from hating the player to understanding and challenging the game,
Exactly.
We can create a world where everyone has a fair shot.
A fair shot at winning.
At winning, yeah.
That's a great point.
So, as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the Haters Handbook, I keep coming back to, like, how can we actually apply this to our own lives? You know what I mean? Like this hate the game concept.
Right. It's not just some abstract idea. It's really a framework for understanding the world.
Totally.
And our place in it.
So instead of, getting caught up in those comparisons, feeling envious of other people's successes, or even, judging people for their struggles, Robinson really challenges us to step back and look at that bigger picture.
Analyze the bigger picture.
Yeah. So it's about asking ourselves, like, okay, what are the rules of this game that I'm playing?
Right. What are the systems?
Yeah. What are the systemic factors that are
shaping
my opportunities?
My opportunities.
Yeah.
What are those, like, unwritten rules?
Totally.
Or those hidden advantages?
Yeah. Are there things that I'm benefiting from that I don't even realize?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
For a lot of people.
But it's so important.
It is.
If we want to create a more just world.
A more equitable world.
More equitable world, yeah. It's about understanding that our lives are all intertwined.
They are.
In ways that we might not always see.
Right.
And once we start to see those connections, that's when we can start to challenge those systems.
Exactly.
That are perpetuating this inequality.
So are we shifting our focus?
Yeah, so we're shifting our focus.
From hating the player.
From hating the player.
Hating the game.
To hating the game.
You got it.
So it's not about judging individuals for their wins or losses. It's about saying, okay, how can we change the rules?
Yeah. How can we change the rules of the game?
So that everyone has a shot.
Everyone has a fair shot. Yeah.
At success.
It's a call to action.
It is.
It's an invitation to become more aware.
More critical.
More critical.
More engaged.
More engaged, yeah.
In creating that better world.
Exactly.
So as you go about your day today,
think about it.
Think about the games you're playing.
Yeah. What games are you playing?
Are the rules fair?
Are there hidden advantages?
What can you do?
What can you do to level the playing field?
To level the playing field for yourself and others?
For yourself and for others, yeah.
And remember, changing the game is a collective effort.
It is.
We
have to work together.
It requires all of us to be honest with ourselves.
To be honest with ourselves.
To challenge our biases.
Challenge our own biases.
And work together to create that more just and equitable world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Haters Handbook.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's given you a lot to think about.
Yeah, some food for thought.
And some inspiration to go out there and change the game.
Remember, it's not about hating the players.
It's about understanding the game.
It's about understanding and challenging the system.
That shape our lives.
Until next time.
Keep questioning.
Keep learning.
And keep pushing for a better world.
Absolutely.